All right, this is going to be for seniors who have been missing a lot of class and need some help getting caught up. We are going to go back a couple weeks to where we've really started two projects. So don't feel too far behind. We've really only done two things. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time walking you through each of those things. The first one, probably the one you can do pretty quickly. Well, actually, both of them, if you sit down and do, probably shouldn't take you more than a couple of hours, is going to be our poetry portfolio. So I'm going to scroll down until I see the one that maybe matches the date, the last time I was in class. But I also do my best to label them for you. So if you get stuck, you can find it. So here, making our poetry portfolios, that sounds like what we're looking for. So I'm going to crack it open and I'm going to read through the instructions here. Okay, and you can even see I have another video from last year, but this one should also make sure everything is up to date. So first thing I'm going to do is see that it's asking me to make a document. So I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm just going to open up a new tab, maybe go to Google Docs, but actually if you type in docs.new, it's just going to pull up a new Google Doc for you. Okay, so I did the thing. I made a document here. It's not really going to let me work with it until I title it. So I'm going to title it whatever my last name is. So I'll put your last name and then portfolio, and that will just help us find it. So now it's going to ask us to turn in a link. Okay, so we have to turn in a link to this assignment. So I'm going to go up here to share. So it's okay. It might seem backwards. We're turning in a blank document, but because it's through Google Docs, if you turn it in blank, it'll continue to update as you work on it. So I'm going to make sure that I share with FWPS, and then edit. So that way I can leave comments, and down the line when we come back to this project, I'll be able to give you some good feedback. I'm going to take that link, again, FWPS editor, copy link, and I'm going to take it back to our Canvas page. And it looks like it's linked to an assignment on Canvas. I can click here or just go over here to assignments. Open that up in a new tab. I'm going to go down the assignment until I see the one called Poetry Portfolio. So that matches what we are doing. And I am going to submit it. So yours will have a little button that just says begin assignment, I believe. And you are going to let it load here. And all you do once you get to the submission point is copy and paste the URL. Boop, and hit submit. Okay, so we're not just doing a blank document, we are turning in some poems. So in class, throughout the month of February and March, we've written about 9 or 10 poems, but here I'm just looking for these initial 9 poems. So just to help me organize this in the portfolio, I'm literally going to just copy and paste them on my portfolio. And if I have my notebook and I was here for some of these days, I'm just going to go through and type up these poems from my notebook straight to this document. But for example, maybe I missed a couple of these days, and I want to go through and type up whatever the poem was that was assigned. We'll just say, oh, I missed the first day where we wrote a poem about joy. It's conveniently linked back to that Canvas page. So I'm going to click on it. And it's going to load up that Canvas page. We did all of these poems as the Do Now assignment. So I'm just going to scroll down until I get to the Do Now. And here we go, write 3 to 5 lines of poetry that express the emotion of joy. And then I give you a couple like little bonus things you can do if you kind of want to challenge yourself using some of these poetic techniques we've looked at throughout the year. And just because I have a bad memory, I am going to copy and paste that again back to my assignment. And I can just write my poem here for the first time. So 3 to 5 lines of poetry that express the emotion of joy. I have a couple cats at home, so maybe I'll write a poem about my cats greeting me at the door and meowing and wanting to bite my face because they love me so much, because that makes me joyful, right? So whatever your thing is, and then you're going to go on and read through these next 8 or so poems and type them up. So again, we start out really easy. I only ask for 3 to 5 lines in the first couple. And as you kind of get into the rhythm, you can write some longer poems. And we're ending it with the Roots poem that we finished up about 3 weeks ago at this point. And if you have questions about what the Roots poem is, definitely go through and read that assignment. That was something we started back in January. So if you're still a little bit fuzzy on that, please reach out kind of ASAP. Because we're moving on from that. So that's my first project. So this portfolio, right now, we haven't done anything besides typed up the poems from our notebooks here. So let's put that away. That's one box. The other box is what we're calling our independent poet study. So this is, we're going to do the same thing on Canvas, where we just go back to our modules. And we find the one that looks like it's about where we started this poet study project. So in your poet study, you had a selection of 9 different poets, all different eras of poetry from the 1800s to modern day, all different subjects, and people from all around the world. So it looks like if we get into semester 2, we're going to start that. And again, right, I titled the modules. So learn about possible poets circuit. Okay, so that's where I'm going to pick up. And again, this was only about 2-3 weeks ago. And what we did as a class is we had a little kind of note tracker and we went around the classroom and we learned about these 9 different poets. We have Gibran, we have Nikki Giovanni, Kendrick Lamar, Emily Dickinson, Wendell Berry, Pablo Neruda, Mary Oliver, Sonia Sanchez, and finally Carolyn Forche. So you might recognize a couple of those names, but just because you don't recognize the names doesn't mean that person might not be of interest to you. So if you're curious, you can click on their names. It'll link to a poem of theirs, and you can do a little bit of reading about them as well. But you're going to end up picking one. So really, I encourage you to spend time with each poet, learning a little bit about who they are, their background, when they were writing, what they read about, and choose one. Once you choose your single poet, you are going to read some of their poetry. So let's see if we can get caught up here. Our first 5 poems. Good. So that's about where we are right now, right? You'll notice this was only about a week ago. Our first 5 poems. So here it is. You see most people, actually we have people doing each of the 9 poets. A lot of people really liked Kendrick Lamar. Not a big surprise. Pablo Neruda is also very popular. But everybody is doing a different poet, right? This is really an opportunity for you to spend some time learning about a single individual's work. So you are here. I have a digital version of the note catcher I want you to use. But if you come back to class, you can pick up a paper copy. It might be a little easier just to do some writing on the paper copy of the note catcher. So this note catcher, you're going to make a copy of if you want to use the digital version. It is going to ask you to find any 5 poems by that poet. So if it's Kendrick Lamar, you could choose any 5 songs rather by Kendrick Lamar. If you chose Nikki Giovanni, you could do any 5 poems by Nikki Giovanni. Now, if you're not in class, because I have some printed copies of the poems or different books of poetry. But say you're sick, whatever, you're at home, what can you do? Well, you can just Google that poet. So if I'm interested in Nikki Giovanni poetry, and it's gonna pull up some of her stuff, and I can just open up some of her poems and give them a quick read. So there's a little bit about Nikki Giovanni. See all poems. No complaints. That one sounds interesting, right? So that might be my first poem I choose to read and annotate. So I'm going to go through and I'll read this poem. Looks like this one's a little bit longer, but I bet it's a good one. And I'm going to title it. So this one would be called, No Complaints. And I'm going to go through the literal meaning. This poem literally means whatever, whatever, whatever. I'm going to notice what it's doing poetically, right? Is it using metaphors, similes? Is it doing cool things with rhyming, with imagery, with sound, anything kind of beyond the surface literal meaning? And then finally, what does this poem reveal about being and unbeing, right? And this is something we've been talking about for a couple months at this point. What does it reveal about maybe how you should live your life, or what does it warn you about what to avoid in your life? And if you need to learn more about being and unbeing, we do have a ton of resources on those. I encourage you to go back through Canvas, see what we've been doing in class. So once you get these 5 poems done, you'll have a decent understanding of who your poet is, or what their style is, what the subjects they talk about are. And finally, you're going to be basically caught up to where we left off today. And that is starting your actual poet study, which you are going to organize using a slideshow. So I'm going to look for the module from today or last class. It looks like today is the 23rd of March. So I'm just going to click there. And here we go. So due today, begin your poet study. Turn in a blank slideshow here. Okay, so now it's going to have us do just like you did in the poetry portfolio. You're just going to turn in a blank slideshow. Again, it might seem a little bit silly. Maybe I'm going to choose a theme that matches my poet. If I have Wendell Berry, I know he really likes farming, so I'm going to pick maybe something that looks a little bit more natural, naturey. This one kind of looks like a nice clear sky, so I'm going to choose a background that kind of fits the vibe of my poet. I'm going to title my presentation with my last name, whatever your last name is, and call it a poet study. Okay, so and just like I did before, really no difference. I'm going to hit the share button. I'm going to get the link, change it to editor, and pause this video, of course, so you can follow along. And I'm going to copy that link. I'm going to take it back to Canvas. It looks like I turn it in here. I try to label and hyperlink everything for you, just for ease of access. And I'm going to click on student view so you can see it from your own perspective. Hit new attempt, copy and paste that URL, and submit. So now anytime you update something on your poet study presentation, it'll automatically update so I can help keep you on track. Okay, so where do we leave off? Here's where we left off. So let's take a look at the next instruction. Okay, I'm going to find a background or a theme that feels like conveys our poet's vibe. You can find some if you log into this website with your school email. You'll be able to download some free themes, kind of cool. And then you're going to fill out your first 2 slides. So right here, your first slide will have your poet's name, a picture of your poet, anything you like on the internet, whatever, and 2 to 3 reviews of your poet's work. These typically, if you're in class, you can just look on the back of the books. It'll say like, Mary Oliver's poetry is amazing, right? By the New York Times, right? And that's her review from the New York Times. But you can also look these up online as long as you cite your sources, right? So let me just show you what that looks like. So if I just Google Mary Oliver reviews, Oh, there you go. Oliver's focus on the wild landscape is so intense that it's almost startling when human figures beyond the poet intrude, right? And then, ooh, I would cite American Magazine there. Her poems, which are built of unadorned language and accessible imagery, have a pedagogical, almost homiletic quality. What's that mean? I don't know, but that's what Seattle Review of Books says about it. So it must be good, right? So I could copy and paste that into my slideshow. And then last thing, if you do this last thing, you'll be all caught up, is the biography. On your next slide, you tell me a little bit where they're from. When were they making art? Was it in the 1890s? Was it in the 1960s? You tell me. And all of this is going to be in your own words, right? I can tell when you just copy and paste off the internet, this is you practicing rephrasing things in your voice, which I think is probably one of your strongest skills to build as a writer, is your own voice. You're going to tell me what type of genres they work in, right? Or do they write love poetry? Do they write kind of like advice? Do they try to describe the natural world? Do they make commentary on social issues, right? What are they most well known for, right? Is Kendrick most well known for his lyricism or his high production value, right? You tell me. Is it for one particular song? Is it for a particular moment, cultural comment, right? Whatever that thing is, you tell me in your opinion what they're most well known for. And this is kind of also an art project, so make it look good. Add another image, whether that's a cover of their book, another picture of the poet, a GIF, a short video. It's a slideshow, so really make it whatever you think is engaging. If you want to see examples of what that looks like, I have that, of course, on Canvas for you. The way I set it up is I give you the instructions, then the next slide is an example of those instructions. And then I give you the next set of instructions, and I give you another example of those instructions. You should just be able to follow along through the whole presentation, but we're really only on part one right now. So there's that, there's my example, there's biography, and there's my example of biography. And that's as far as we've gotten. So if you can do those things, and I don't know how long I've been talking, but I imagine if you set aside like not even 3 hours, I don't know, 2 hours, an hour and a half, depending on how much you have coming to the conversation, you'll be able to get all caught up, which I think is pretty cool. We definitely miss you in class. If you're not there, please reach out if you need help. But other than that, I hope to see you soon, and I hope that this was helpful.